New Mexico is a leading producer of crude oil and natural gas in the United States, and the energy industry plays a critical role here in New Mexico's economy. Yet New Mexico is also a state where local governments are taking action to prevent or restrict oil and gas drilling. Now, this week, San Miguel County voted to impose some of the strictest requirements in the country on oil and gas drilling, and a federal judge is reviewing a ban passed by the Mora County Commission a little while ago. Now, Sophie, these are not wealthy counties, and southeast New Mexico's oil patch is certainly booming. There's no doubt on that. But what's going on here? There's always a tug of war here. We all know that between environmentalists and folks that want to drill. But where do we stand in this tug of war right now?
It's a fascinating issue, actually, because as you said, it is a relatively poor county. There are other counties that are also looking at this who are not necessarily flush. I don't want to ascribe ulterior motives to the county at all, but I do want to point out that at least one lease has been sort of held up, and the square acreage versus the amount that's being paid does seem pretty unbalanced, like a fairly low amount. We see areas in New Mexico that experience tremendous growth because of oil and gas. But here's Mora saying, you know what, we don't think it's worth it. It's fascinating. And I think as the first county in the country to enact this kind of restriction, this is going to be a test case for the rest of the U.S.
Sure. I know it's going to bounce between counties here, but I have to wonder if the San Miguel folks were looking at the Mora County folks and saying, look, there's a chance to take a firm stand here and let the courts kind of figure it out after that.
I think there was that, and I also think they were looking to what Santa Fe did years ago when it did restrict oil and gas drilling successfully and hasn't had to face the kind of court challenges that happened in Mora. Because basically, I think people are looking at the outcome, which is that they want controlled oil and gas drilling if it happens.
Right.
Or not at all, to make it expensive. So if you restrict it in a way, you can limit the damage to your water and to your air and to your land, while at the same time allowing people, if they want to pay the price, to exercise their constitutional rights.
Sure.
You know, I am from Las Vegas, and I can tell you that people there would rather have their water than they would an oil well and money.
Right.
And my folks ranched in Mora for 30 years. And there's nothing more important. So it is a question of values and a question of older traditions. I think it's not even modern environmentalists. It's people who've lived on the land for a long time and they want to keep it the way it is, and they're not willing to give that up for $1.
I appreciate that distinction, because that is a distinction, rather than environmentalists flying in from around the country and raising a ruckus. It's a whole different deal. But Inez makes a good point, Robert Nikolewski. This is about local mores and local wants and desires at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, although I would be very surprised if the Mora County ordinance holds up in court.
Okay.
The San Miguel one, even though it's pretty restrictive, sounds like they've kind of dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's on that. The question I've got is that for so long we're talking about what are we going to do to boost the economy in New Mexico, and this seems like a preemptive strike for an area of the state that is really struggling. Now, I know that there are concerns all over the country, but I think we could probably look to Colorado as a good model, because John Hickenlooper, a Democratic governor, just this past year was able to hammer out an agreement in which the environmentalists and the industry was able to work out a good agreement that everyone could agree upon about fracking. I think that you don't have to have an either or possibility where you've got a drill in your backyard or nothing at all.
Right. Well, and he got swept back into office. He made it work somehow, Mr.
Well, I don't know if he got swept back into office. He kind of limped in. He got back in there, but they did have a pretty well-reasoned compromise in Colorado, and I hope that New Mexico can take the same tack.
And that brings a point. Rob brings a point up, Tom, that leadership about this issue in the overall. We don't hear the counties are left to sort of fight it on their own, but no one's really kind of stepped out there, and I'm saying the governor. This is the direction we're going with oil and gas, or maybe we should think about this. You see what I mean? There hasn't been an overall voice like a Hickenlooper.
Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about it until Rob had mentioned it. But yeah, it really is if this is an issue that the governor sees as pertinent, it is a great opportunity for the governor to get involved and to be seen as that person who brings all sides to the table.
Where do the politics step in? And now that we have a new makeup in the House, all these different things.
There's politics, and then there's northern New Mexico politics, and the governor has done a a really effective job, good or bad or otherwise is debatable, but has done an effective job of making an influence and impacts in the 4 northern counties. Specifically, when you look at Rio Arriba County, San Miguel, and Mora County, these are places that have been long strongholds against oil and gas drilling of any kind. And so this the makeup, the demographic makeup has not changed there. What has changed, though, is the public conversation of quality of life. And I think that's where the real conflict is, as Inez brought in, is that you have very successful oil field families, oil well workers from the southeastern part of the state who are trying to impose their quality of life on a standard which is very different in Mora County, San Miguel County, Rio Arriba. So I think finding that compromise is key, and maybe the governor, if it was something that she wanted to do, could step in and start mediating this whole issue.
Sure, because the jobs thing, Sophie, can't be ignored. What Rob mentioned, that if there's no other industry I can think of where the money flow really turns on that quickly, it's with oil and gas.
It certainly does, and we do see that throughout the state. But I think both Inez and Tom have raised a really interesting and good point, which is that we are in a place where I'm going to expand on it. We're in a place where we're really having not just a national but a global conversation about the environment and about quality of life. We see parts of the country, parts of the world that are very damaged by what's happened at the hands of industry, unfortunately, and sometimes at the hands of government. And there is this sort of David and Goliath, this beautiful moment, I think, that's happening where this community is saying, we've thought through what we value and we want something different. Now, the bigger question, and this is something that Judge Browning, who's ruling on this issue right now, is gonna have to balance is there a precedent? Is there a way that this can actually happen for this community, or do they have to find another route? Have we gone so far with our, I think our protection of business interests that we can't balance those against the needs of the community? And I think it's going to be tough for the judge to. I think it's going to be tough for him to rule in favor of the community.
Yeah, interesting. Now, that's all the time we have right now, but we'll have more topics of the week when we go on the clock, on the web. For more news of the week, archived interviews, and often other bonus material, head to our website at NewMexicoInFocus.org. Find us on Facebook and Twitter by searching New Mexico in Focus. And as always, all of us here at New Mexico in Focus appreciate your time and your effort to stay informed and engaged. I'm Gene Grant. We'll see you next week in Focus.